Recording. All right. Hello, everybody. I am so happy to be joined today by Alan Tennant, who is the president and CEO of the Calgary Real Estate Board. Welcome, Alan.
Hello, Catherine. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So originally this was supposed to be a live show and we had a little bit of technical difficulties. So we are recording this interview and we will put it on our Facebook channel and on YouTube. You will be able to add some comments in the comment field below, and we'll make sure to monitor the conversation and to answer your comments as we go. So a quick note about social chats. This interview is part of a series of broadcasts that Heather and I have put together to help small businesses and real estate agents with their businesses. And we have been interviewing over 50 leaders in their industry, and we hope that this show will keep you educated and entertained. So, Alan, it has been a really rocky couple of months in real estate due to COVID-19. We are in June 2020, and maybe we can start with how you feel the market has changed and some of the biggest challenges that came up with that.
Well, it has been a remarkable series of events, and the abruptness of how the market stopped, I guess, and I'll say most markets, certainly in Calgary and area, we were already very challenged. The oil price war that was waging raging between Saudi Arabia and Russia and other countries was already creating all kinds of grief in a marketplace that was slowly starting to recover. One way to look at it, I guess, is our graph of activity was kind of looking like a hockey stick. And we were kind of at the bottom and starting to come up. We barely even got started coming up. And then this COVID-19 pandemic took over our lives. So since that time, it's been business as unusual for realtors all over the world, obviously, but specifically in North America, the challenge has been like no other. And what we found was our members really quickly adapted to a new low-touch world of real estate. And with that, they were in some ways a little ahead of us in calls to ban open houses, for example. In our marketplace, there was a great debate and great discussion about the pros and cons of that type of activity. And ultimately, open houses have been banned. So that was quite a big development, and we'll maybe come back to how that has evolved. But the other physical changes within the marketplace has been that many offices actually closed. Our board offices here at the Calgary Real Estate Board were open, but it's by appointment, so access is restricted. And with that, the activity certainly indicated what's been happening, and the fact that consumers kind of pulled back. So the statistics for April were quite dramatically down. Like most markets in Canada, we were seeing sales off by about 60% from a year ago. But the turnaround started in May as realtors got more comfortable, as their clients got more comfortable. And let's face it, housing needs don't stop. The ability to transact real estate in Alberta was deemed a essential service. And what that meant for our members was that they still had to be extremely careful. This was a privilege, not a right, is how we approached it. But we went out of our way to educate our members on how best to protect themselves and their clients. So along the way, I think we all got very adept at taking those measures to heart. And we all got good at things like Zoom.
Right, at Zoom and everything online. So just to put us into perspective, we are in British Columbia and things are really reopening like fast. Like even restaurants now are starting to open. And so we're starting to see that people are slowly conducting more and more business as it used to be, but with safety measures. But I think people are starting to let people into their home for open houses with certain, safety measures in place. So where are you at in this in Calgary? Have you started open houses again, or it's still banned?
So open houses are still banned at this point. The work is underway to change that. We're now close to our phase 2 re-entry point, and I'm not sure how aware everybody is around the country, but Calgary, unfortunately, and Brooks were delayed in the part 1 re-entry phase, and just recently that was lifted for those regions. So we are now kind of caught up with the rest of the province, not 100%, but we're there. Some restrictions still live on. And the next phase, according to recent reports, is supposed to start in a couple of weeks, but it might start a bit sooner. So we're hopeful for that. But I think what we're seeing is the same probably in BC, and that is a lot of caution around how reopening works and what's involved in doing it properly and safely. So, there is, I think, a very kind of hypersensitive awareness in the real estate community of doing things that are seen to be right and that have the public interest at heart. And that's one of the things I love about this industry is the reflex to protect the consumer. And that's why we had members calling out saying, ban open houses, we need to stop this activity. Whenever I heard that, I would ask if they're seeing any unsafe activity, and the answer was no, it just doesn't seem right. We shouldn't be doing it. So I think we'll ease back into public open houses in, a properly and orderly way, but I think we're a few weeks away from that happening.
Okay, this is really interesting. So I guess we are kind of those 2 weeks in, and it's really interesting how quickly you go back in your old slippers kind of thing. But I think people do keep in mind the extra safety measures, and that brings us to our next point. How do you feel the marketing or how to conduct real estate has shifted? Because here we've seen a huge growth in Facebook Live in any kind of online meeting. So like we are doing now with Zoom, but also with using social media to actually go live and create live events to take people with us in the homes, say, making it that the property would be vacant and the agent would come with gloves and so on, and then bring in someone in through a Facebook Live event. And we've seen this come up also where when you list your property, you can actually add a link for people to join a live open house. So is that something that your agents have embraced?
Absolutely, and I think it was interesting to see that I think there was kind of a realization that our industry was not as tech savvy as we thought we were. A lot of tools really went from being nice to haves or options became must-haves, and what we saw was the separation between realtors that were already very much in this game and had embedded these tools, and I'm talking about social media as a collective tool, and then all the tools that go with it in terms of using Facebook Live or using Zoom or using video. All these different methods of marketing became much more critically important and had to be established in kind of a low-touch environment. And I think one of the things that we're seeing in terms of the shift is not to. I feel like the great lie we went through for many years about moving to a paperless society. This is not going to be a no-touch real estate environment going forward, and the degree of low touch I think will soften. But I do see some habits changing to where buying a home is a very personal and tactile, I'll say, process where people like to be in the home. They like to get a feel for the home. The idea of walking around the property, walking around the neighborhood, seeing, listening, taking it all in, the smells and so on. All that is critically important. You can't replace everything. All the senses can't be replaced with the use of technology, but the process to narrow down the search is going to change, I believe. I think we'll hopefully leap away from consumers having the need to go through dozens of homes to narrow their search. I think a lot of that can be done now using the tools that are being perfected. And I think consumers are going to make better and more data-driven decisions. And I think that's critically important too, so that yes, there's a sense of things, a feeling people get when they're standing in the right home or the wrong home, but some of that could be established maybe upstream more so than what we've seen in the past. So I think marketing is shifting that way. The other aspect of marketing that's so important in the real estate business is constant follow-up. And I think what we're seeing is that this is being driven a lot more by consumers. And the form of that follow-up has to be tailored to that consumer's needs, basically. So what I'm seeing overall is, in terms of marketing, the lower touch approach is probably here to stay.
Okay, this is really interesting, the narrowing down aspect of it. And I think this is where it comes down to, is that now you don't have to go on a Saturday and put all your kids in the car and make all these different pit stops everywhere, where you have access before to a website with some images. And that was the first narrow down, and then video tours came in. And I think the whole concept of live, and that's what we teach. Heather and I teach a lot of social media webinars on connecting real estate virtually, and Facebook and Instagram and so on. And what we teach a lot is that live are events, so people can join you, they can ask questions, and it's true, it takes them one step closer to that narrowing of, okay, well, I'm down to maybe 3, now I'm going to get in the car and let's go see that place where we can. So hopefully this is there to stay. How was it for the agents, like, to embrace this? Like, was it something, did you have a lot of feedback or frustration, or do you think that people are starting to kind of get a little bit more confident with technology to maybe keep that as a tool in the future as things open up, like in person more? Do you think it's something that's going to stay?
Oh, I believe so. And I think what we did see was a spike in need to become educated and really skillful using these various tools. And I applaud the work you and Heather are doing. I think we need more of it. Our training department has always been embracing various tools to help our members understand things, using video, using webinars, interactive webinars. I mean, it's not enough to just pump out how-to videos, but we need in-time training tools or support tools. So sometimes it's just, help me solve my problem, and I need to do it right now. So we use the WalkMe tool. We've been using it for many years. We have 5,500 members in our organization. Over 4,000 are actually registered to use WalkMe, and they love it. It's a fantastic tool. So those are the kind of things that we already had in place. I mean, actually, the number of members being up over the 4,000 mark it's been at that level since before COVID-19 hit us. So the idea was that there was resources available that people suddenly paid attention to. And subject matter experts like you and Heather and others were suddenly in demand, and I think that's quite telling. But the reality is, these are skills that could have been developed before, but there wasn't really an apparent need to some people. But now that need, I think, is more universal. So I think that's a shift that just will stay with us. And I think the other reason I believe that is it's being driven by consumers. And the fact is, most consumers now have had a Zoom experience. They're doing FaceTime, they're doing Facebook Live, they're more comfortable with it. And now their mind is turning to, well, wait a minute, I don't need to drive across town to go look at that place on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, I was a realtor for 26 years. I had that experience where a client would phone me and say, yeah, we were driving home from the grocery store, saw this open house sign, and we went in and we fell in love. Well, it didn't happen very often, but it happened. And now what they're probably more inclined to do is go, that place is interesting. oh look, we can actually do it online. Great. But I think the biggest takeaway from the pandemic is the importance of relationships. And it's more important than ever that realtors develop those kinds of trusting relationships with consumers. And it just evolves differently now. So I think that's a big part of how we're going to see the shift into the new way we're going to be doing business.
Yes, and that's something that we say a lot is talking about relationship is make sure you follow your notifications, your messages, and so on, but also ask your customers what they're comfortable dealing with. And you know what? Some people are happy on Skype. Some people are just hanging out at different places, or they just rather talk on the phone. So to be able to reach people where they're at and where they're comfortable with, because some people just can't log into Zoom, you know.
That's
And
right.
so, but and to keep that relationship going in the future, and to be able to have technology to do so is, I think, for sure something to say. So you mentioned walkway or something. What is that? I'm not familiar with it.
WalkMe,
Walk.
it's called. Yeah, and if people just Google WalkMe, it's a very effective tool. But how we apply it is we modify the WalkMe tool to use our content or to help members understand, how do I upload a video? How do I change this field in the MLS, for example, those kinds of things. So, but it's got a very broad application, and but it's on-time learning or on-time support, because I think there's two different things that members reach out to us for, and sometimes it is training, and other times they just need help in a certain area right away. So we provide a 7-day-a-week help desk where our teams can walk members through, but quite often that conversation actually leads to teaching them how to fish and saying, so if you use the WalkMe tool, click on this link, it'll help you with the next question you might encounter. So it's just an example, I think, of how these tools have been around, but there's maybe some new ways to leverage them. But the bottom line in all this is, the real estate experience is still founded in matching up a buyer with a seller. Good realtors understand the value of relationships. They understand that you hold those relationships together by communicating really effectively, and that's critically important right now, because effective communication is in the eye of the beholder. So if there's a client out there that would just as soon you phone them, smart agents are phoning them.
Yeah, right.
Shove a video chat at them, so you have to read the audience.
Yeah, totally. And then, so this is where it gets like fun for all for people like me, is where do you see the future of the market heading, say for summer and fall? We like to pick at your prediction. We won't hold you up to it. It's always interesting to know. So what do you think the market is going to do?
Yeah, well, the old crystal ball's getting quite a workout these days, but I guess I'll just recap. First of all, the rumors of the demise of the real estate market were greatly exaggerated. So, we can first start from that I think it was never as bad as everybody expected. A 60% drop in sales volume in April was very significant. Prices hardly dropped at all. Not a very dramatic move, 2-3% difference in prices even going through May. So I think the outlook is actually very strong. Frankly, it's no coincidence that real estate was deemed as an essential service. I can speak for Alberta. I know that was a case in Ontario as well. The ability of consumers to be able to transact real estate, to exercise their property rights, how and when they deem it, is an important part of Canadian culture. So, that's a key factor, I think, in driving what happens over the next 6-8 months, 2 years maybe. The recovery, I think, will be slow. I think the longer term outlook, and I've been paying a lot of attention to various predictors and people who read the markets in very critical ways. I think the longer term solutions don't involve big government. It'll involve us weaning government out of our lives. They played a very important role in rescuing the economy in Canada, but I think it's time for them to let free enterprise and the marketplaces drive the recovery. So I think real estate will be a good indicator of the confidence of consumers going forward. But I think it'll be, if I may make a couple of predictions about how it'll work, is I think we'll see that technology skills will become a bigger part of personal brands, not just realtors' personal brands, but consumers and people in general will regard themselves as being tech savvy, but in a new way. I think we'll also see the gamification of home viewing, because if you think about the online experience, and I'm not a gamer by any stretch, but I do lean over and watch my grandson when he lets me from time to time. He's 11 years old, our oldest grandson, and it is fascinating to see even how in some of these games, how they move through rooms. I see it from a realtor's perspective, and it's nothing like what we do right now with video tours, which is very static. The 360-degree concept was always interesting, but when I was selling real estate, 8-9 years ago, I would always make the comment, do you really actually walk into a room and stand and look in 360 degrees? Of course not. So I think this is where the evolution of the tools are before us. And I think we'll see consumer-driven open house experiences where they'll be a little more demanding, I guess, that will cause some concern. But again, leading edge thinkers will see this as a great challenge. Consumers will demand a different experience. And I think basically the bottom line is I think we're going to see a greater need for more consultative data analysis service demands of realtors. So I think realtors do a very important, play a very important role for consumers, not only in helping them make decisions and helping and consulting them, but also analyzing data as they work through this. So I think the real estate markets will be on a gentle and stable incline over time. Just demand will build and build as confidence develops in the job markets and in the economies, but it's going to be slow. So we need to manage our expectations accordingly.
Yeah, I like I have 3 kids, and then it's like playing Minecraft, but with live open houses.
Well, you can imagine that, and I think that's
right.
That's the point. And I think we'll start seeing people applying that world into this world, and they'll have less resistance from people with my hair color.
There we go. Okay, I have one final question before I let you go, and it's my husband is a real estate lawyer, and I was talking to him about this interview because I was really looking forward to it, and he said, would you mind asking if you think that there's going to be for this summer maybe a higher interest for say cottage properties or second homes for people that can't travel, for example, and are in the province and decide that maybe they should look for like a vacation property that they can go on the weekends for their family. If you see that maybe that's going to pick up, because we're in Whistler, and he had a couple of transactions this week where people went really quick about buying like a little cottage or something where they could escape to, because all of a sudden they had no summer plans. So he was thinking that was maybe one trend we're going to see here, and he was wondering if you think that would be the case in Calgary as well.
I believe so. I grew up in Kamloops, so running out to Shuswap Lake was, a tradition on a Friday afternoon. So I think that the cocooning that we've seen in our society for the last couple of dozen years, maybe, it will be ramped up remarkably. Where this forced cocooning that we've been experiencing was uncomfortable, and it wasn't something anybody really wanted, except there's some upsides to it. And I'm seeing more and more that there's some resistance to returning to normal, because maybe this is better than normal. And the idea might be that the pivot could be that the retreat home, the cottage, the cabin out at the lake, maybe it's the primary residence. And maybe being somewhat closer to work might be the secondary residence. And if you start to factor in driverless transportation and better internet connections, again, picturing that drive to Shuswap with its even cell coverage being spotty depending where you are on the highway, those problems go away, I think, as technology gets better and better. So if you think about that driving time as being productivity time, so your downtime is really yours, I think that's a very exciting possibility. So for us, I look out my window here and I can see the Rockies way off in the distance. I think we're going to see more and more people doing the reverse, looking out, seeing the city in the distance, and heading into the city when they need to conduct business or do work. But most of the time, I think remote contributions to the economy and having a skill set that is valuable remotely, such as yours, for example, is going to be more and more common. And I think that's exciting. So in the short term, these things are always transitional. There probably are more people out there saying, you know what, maybe it's time to have a look at being closer to skiing, because the ski season was cut short. My wife and I bought new skis the Saturday before. We picked them up last weekend. Darn it. But you know, if that's important to you, I think you would want to find a way to maximize that lifestyle and to generate a living around that. And I think that's going to be a very exciting trend in our society.
Absolutely. I love skiing too, and I went to a ski comp in Banff at up with my son, and we love it out there. So I hope we'll be able to see each other on the slopes one day. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a fascinating I say fascinating because there's so much going on, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that pans out, maybe like even 6 months from now, see where we were at with our predictions. But I think we're pretty good. I think we've got this. So thank you so much. I will put in the comments and in the captions of this post and where this video is going to be hosted more information about your board and where they can kind of learn more about what it is that you guys do out there in Alberta. And thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Great, Catherine. It was my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.